Hey, so if you found this video, you're looking for an overview of the rules for the OSRS Time Travelling Ironman. If you want to just see this in document form, there is the link to the document in the description of this video. Otherwise, feel free to throw this up on a second monitor, and I'll go over the rules for you. So basically, the premise of this game mode is that you're going to create an account that goes all the way back to January 4th, 2001, and is locked to only the content that was released then. In order to unlock additional content in future months, you'll go by a month-by-month basis and complete all of the content in each month to unlock the next. This isn't really designed to be a completionist game mode, so to speak. You don't have to complete every single individual thing, and rather a historical retrospective. It will go through quite a bit of the content in each month, but there won't necessarily be the goal to complete everything. One other caveat is that I've created this game mode with OSRS in mind. You could apply it to RS3 very easily, however there would be additional complexities to that. So first, a little bit of credit. I was brainstorming this game mode since 2017, but there was a lot of people who came before me that were definitely inspiration as I developed the game mode, and also all the way back to the Reddit post by Glackors, which is effectively at a high level the same game mode that I've got here. But notably, Jimmy's by Release is probably the most influential. Love that series. I really wanted to do basically that, but with more historical retrospective of all the non-quest content as well, so that's kind of what this serves to be. Munkle's Unky has a As Jagex Intended RS3 version. There's Slayer's Music's Time Traveler series, which basically was based off that Reddit post. Jimmy also came out with a 2007 locked group Ironman, which is good fun and also in the same theme. And then finally, Nick at Night has a Time Traveler Ironman, which is something I actually participated in designing, and that's kind of served as the basis slash prototype for this game mode as it is today. So, the rules. I've tried to construct these rules to be general enough to be applied to any month. However, there are some notable exceptions we'll get to later. The first one's easy, must play Ironman mode. If you want to play hardcore ultimate, totally optional. Obviously gives you extra difficulty there. The account is content restricted to everything that was released in the current month it is located or in months prior. That's pretty straightforward. All the content that was added to our OSRS's development is eligible. That is January 2001 to August 2007 and February 2013 to today, and is still available in the modern game. Obviously, if something was removed or patched out, we won't be able to access it at all. And there's going to be a big list of content access exceptions that I'll go over. This is the big rule. In order to advance to the next month, the account must experience all the content that is available for the month it is currently stuck in. Now, to experience content is kind of the core phrase of this entire game mode, and I've defined it as such. There are 5 different categories that you need to complete in order to consider that content's quote-unquote experienced. First is complete a quest that was released. Really straightforward, that one's super easy. Second is unlock and visit an area of the map that was added. This one also is pretty straightforward and includes things like skill locked areas like the Cook's Guild or the Crafting Guild, that kind of stuff. Third is kill at least one of an attackable NPC that was released. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to run around and kill every single spawn of every goblin and rat that exists in the game. It's kind of pointless. I've defined it as every NPC type that is thematically unique that was in each release. And that basically means that they possess a unique drop that you would want to hunt, specifically a drop that's on the collection log. It has unique or interesting mechanics. It is challenging to defeat. The clearest one here is that it's a new highest level, especially in the first couple months. That's usually the case because the monsters aren't very complex. Or it's considered a boss or demi-boss, obviously. So that should be hopefully pretty straightforward there. The fourth thing that you need to experience is to obtain any new items that serve a quote-unquote unique purpose. And I've defined unique purpose to be items that serve the progression of the account, aka they make it stronger or better or faster. They're thematically unique, i.e. they serve some specific content in some way. They fill niches, like even though it's not best in slot, it might be best in slot somewhere in particular, or they have slots in the collection log. A key example of something that you wouldn't need to obtain is, let's say early on you want to get the best weapon, that would be an adamant sword. However, you don't need to obtain other adamant weapons such as the battle axe, as it's not any better than the sword and doesn't serve any purpose. An example on the flip side of something that you need to obtain, even though it's best in slot, is the Brine Saber. When that comes out, it probably won't be best in slot for melee anymore. However, it does fill a slot in the collection log, and it's a unique drop, and it has a special property in that it automatically salts rock slugs, so it's definitely worth getting. You can also use it underwater, so it's a pretty niche item. Finally, and this is kind of a catch-all, obtain any skill level requirements not otherwise gotten by achieving the above 4. The most notable area I've seen this happen so far is magic and prayer, as they don't necessarily involve items or monsters, but they are abilities that need to be unlocked by obtaining the skill level. And there is one more exception that we'll get into, and that's the excessive grinding exception. That's kind of a big one, pretty complex here. So the rules seem pretty straightforward, but unfortunately, because we're kind of locked into the game as it exists today and as it will continue to be updated, and we're not able to actually run the code as it existed back in the months we'll be locked, we kind of have to try to map it the best we can. So these are the content access exceptions I've kind of brainstormed that would be involved here. So any content that was released in a given month but was later revisited or changed, like balanced, updated, modified, and had quality of life improvements, that kind of stuff, it's still unlocked provided the methodology of the content does not explicitly change based on the balancing update. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Here's some examples. Firstly, banks didn't exist from the beginning. Well, they did, but you could only store coins up until July 2001. So even though that they're there, we're going to not use them until July 2001. A couple other notable ones won't be able to run until March 2004 when the RuneScape 2 client came out. Combat is also different in Classic, but we're going to use OSRS Combat, as that one is what we have access to. NPC drops, we don't know what the drop tables if they've changed or how they've changed, so we're just going to pick up any items that exist from a drop table that we know already exist. The items that don't exist, we obviously can't pick up. Pretty straightforward. Some other exceptions, pets could obviously could drop at any point of the account, so we don't want to have those. We can't stop them from filling the slot in the collection log, but we will be releasing them if we get them before they're released. And then here's two examples that I threw in here that kind of show that explicitly based condition, or explicitly changed condition rather, and that's the Rogue's outfit and the Graceful outfit. So the Rogue's outfit, as you all know, was buffed to give you double loot from thieving. However, it's not something you would have worn while thieving because it didn't give you any other benefit. So that's going to be something that's locked, as I'm not going to just happen to wear that cosmetic outfit because it was cosmetic when it was released, and we're going to wait till the actual buff to use it. Another outfit that was buffed, however, was the Graceful outfit, and that's something that I would have been wearing anyway because of the weight reduction, so I will get a chance to use the passive run energy restoration from the time that is released. So that's just kind of two examples where, like, I'm not going to change the methodology to take advantage of a buff, even though the item existed. If moving on, if any other content became locked behind a future update, I know we had some game integrity updates recently. The only two that I can think of are that box traps require the Eagle's Peak quest and that the Magic Guild requires the Hand in Sand quest. I'll be able to complete that future content in order to get access to the older content, as that will be necessary to get in. Slayer, I think, is going to be one of the most notable exceptions, as it is probably the skill that has changed the most from when it was first released. So in order to try to make it look like it was when it was first released, we're going to only use Slayer Masters that were released at that point in time, obviously, and we're going to try to only slay monsters that released at that point in time. And there's a couple caveats there you can read a little bit more into if you'd like to go into it. But the basic gist is reset the task with Turiel if you can. If you can't, complete the task so we don't get entirely locked out of Slayer, but don't pick up any drops and try not to benefit from it, obviously other than experience, because we have to get that. Finally, there's going to be a ton of content that we're not going to be able to find any information on when it was actually released. The wiki is really complete, but especially with like world spawns and some world map items, it's really unclear what existed when. So we're going to kind of give it a best guess scenario. So like I'm going to use certain pathing options that are available in the map because I don't know exactly when it changed. However, if it's something that we know the date of and it's really obvious, the example here is the Lumbridge Castle Roof Bank. I'm not going to use that until it was available. One exception I'm giving the game mode is the collection log book is available from January 2001 to better track progress of the account. That just kind of makes sense to me. And then finally, clue scrolls. Clue scroll steps will always be completable if they exist within the unlocked area. They only require items already unlocked, and they don't require quests that are unreleased. So even though clue scrolls have changed a lot and they have had a lot of steps added, we're still going to be able to complete those steps as long as they meet those three conditions. I'm sure there will be additional things added to that exception, so definitely check the doc in the future. This is going to be a living doc as we progress through the game mode. There's going to be a lot of weird edge casey stuff that we run into trying to emulate stuff as it was at the point of release. Okay, the second exception is the excessive grinding exception, and this is an exception that I felt was necessary, as if you didn't have this exception right away in January 2001, you would hit a point where you have to get 88 smithing with experience methods that are about 500 to 1,000 experience per hour, meaning you've probably got like a 3,500 hour grind at the very outset of the game mode, and it's just not fun. And the benefit that you get from that grind is a slightly better weapon and slightly better armor. You get to upgrade to an adamant scimitar instead of sword, and adamant kite shield instead of whatever you have access to. I think it's iron kite shield. So I've kind of left this open. It's going to be up to the discretion of the community as we develop this document, or even your own individual preference. If you feel like something isn't a big enough benefit for you to want to grind out 100 hours for, feel free to skip it. This should hopefully only be used as a last resort to prevent burnout. I would definitely like to see most content be experienced in the spirit of the game mode, but you can definitely skip something if you don't want that grind. And any and all exceptions are going to be documented below on this document. I'm just going to go through a couple of them here. One idea I've been playing with for some grinds that are going to spend a lot of time to get a very critical item could be time capped. So for example, I've been theorizing about Slayer. From the day Slayer is released, you can get an Abyssal Whip from Slayer. However, the only weapon you have available to you to get there is a Dragon Longsword, and that's definitely going to take a long time. So I had the thought of, let's theorize you did 5 40-hour weeks working at that, and that means that the month would progress on its own. And actually, that month following the release of Slayer is the Dragon Scimitar, which would be a huge buff to that experience rate. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to do some Slayer for a certain number of hours in that first month, and then I'll progress to the next month, which gives me the Scimitar and allows me to progress a little bit faster up to the Whip. I'm not going to get rid of that unlock goal. I'm just going to kind of split it over 2 months, kind of emulating how time would naturally progress if you were actually playing the game and not just frozen at the end of a month. I haven't really found a lot of good places to apply that, as most grinds that I think are worth doing are not quite like 200-hour grinds, and I've already cut them off before then. But that's one good example where I'm going to apply that. Alright, next is the utility skills. I kind of went over this a little bit with the example of metalsmithing, but pretty much at the release of most skills, there's going to be some very high-level stuff that doesn't really serve a lot of content, specifically like the metalsmithing, as I said, rune crafting, herb lore, construction. There's not a really reason to grind these all the way up to the top right when they were released, as they don't really provide interesting progression for the account. They just have unlocks related to the skill or better money-making methods, item sourcing methods, that kind of stuff. So that stuff's not going to be required. I'm just going to try to go out of my way to get those progression in those skills otherwise or naturally, and so far that's been the case. There are some passive bosses in this game, Olwar, Bryophyta, Hespori, Skotizo. I'm not going to require those to be grinded out on their own. They will be passive, as that's their game design altogether. Plus it would just be way too long to try to grind them out because they have extra complexities that you have to kill a bunch of hill giants, a bunch of moss giants in order to even attempt them, so it wouldn't be fun. That said, however, they must be attempted as often as possible until they are complete. One pretty obvious one here will be pets will not be required to progress. Obviously, we would hit the month where all the skilling pets would release and the account would be stuck there for who knows how long. But to make it interesting, upon release of some of the pets, I'm going to make 1 pet required. I think that would be pretty fun. The Inferno Cape is something that I'm probably not going to attempt. I might, who knows. I feel like it should be required when it's released, but it's such a difficult PVM task that I don't think, I think it would just be a cause of frustration if it was required. So I'm going to keep that not required for now. Raids completion will not be required. Obviously, that's going to be a massive amount of hours, so that'll probably fall under that kind of like 200-hour before we progress rule. But I did also have the idea that maybe we could do a certain number of completions instead of hours, or maybe 1 roll on like the mega rare table for Chambers of Zarek instead, or something like that, or maybe 1 item from Theater of Blood in order to progress. But that's so far off that I feel like the community might have a better idea than that. One of the last things is clue completion. Obviously another passive content. We're not going to require clue completion to progress at all. However, every clue that's dropped will need to be attempted until that log is completed, which is basically never for most tiers. So we're just going to try as many clues as we can. The only exception is when they're released, when the clues are released. So like easy, medium, hard were released together, and then elite and master were released together. We got to complete one clue, at least one clue of each of those tiers the month they're released, and also we have to kill a mimic the month it's released as well, just to experience the content. Finally, farming is not going to block anything as it's considered a passive skill. I'll probably spend a lot of time doing it the month it's released anyway, but it wouldn't make sense to just wait for farming as it's not really designed to be a skill to grind. It's something you do passively. The last thing I'll say is that the wiki is going to be the primary source for all information on when an item was actually released. Obviously, it's not entirely thorough, but it's pretty good. Like most items I've found exact release dates for are on there. And the last thing on this document is just the timeline that I've used to kind of develop my series. Beware, if you scroll too far, you will get some spoilers, as I have future plans on here as well, though you would get those spoilers if you looked up the release dates of stuff on your own anyway. But I'm pretty excited to keep building on this. I'm not too far yet. At this point, I'm only to March of 2002, but I've got some pretty exciting stuff planned from that too. Okay, that's about wraps it up. Definitely a pretty complex game mode. Thanks for your interest. I'm really excited to keep progressing. I hope you are too. If you have any ideas or contributions for it, leave it in the comments of this video or on any of the other Time Traveler Ironman videos. Give me a direct message, whichever you prefer, and we'll start considering it for the document. Also, feel free to revisit the document in the future. This is a living document, and we're going to change it with the new rules and restrictions we come up with as we progress the game mode. Thank you for watching. Make sure to look forward to the next video of Time Traveling Ironman, and I will see you then.